My wife told me to take care of myself, so I did, and that choice exposed her indifference, saved my life, and changed everything I knew about love. That was the moment I realized I had been married to a stranger for 8 years. It started on a Thursday afternoon when my vision went blurry during a conference call. I had been pulling 16-hour days for 3 weeks straight, surviving on energy drinks and whatever I could grab from the vending machine. The project deadline was crushing me, but I kept pushing because that is what you do when you are the lead engineer on a multi-million-dollar contract. When I tried to stand up after the meeting, my legs gave out. My coworker had to help me to a chair while someone else brought me water. The room was spinning and I could barely focus on their faces. My manager sent me home immediately, saying I looked like death warmed over. The drive home was terrifying. I had to pull over twice because I felt like I might pass out behind the wheel. All I could think about was getting home to my wife, having her help me figure out what was wrong, maybe even just holding me while I tried to recover from whatever was happening to my body. I stumbled through her front door around 4 in the afternoon, something I had not done in months. She was sitting on the couch with her laptop, probably working on her blog about home decorating or whatever it was she spent her days writing about. "You are home early," she said without looking up from her screen. I almost collapsed at work. I had to leave early. I sat down heavily in the armchair across from her, still feeling dizzy. She glanced at me for maybe 2 seconds before returning to her laptop. "Did you eat lunch?" "I have not eaten anything real in days. I have been living on caffeine and stress." "Well, there is leftover pizza in the fridge." That was it. No concern in her voice. No offer to help. No suggestion that maybe I should see a doctor. Just leftover pizza. I sat there staring at her, waiting for some kind of reaction that resembled what a wife might show when her husband nearly collapsed from exhaustion. "I think something is really wrong with me," I said, hoping to get through to her. "You work too much. I have told you that before." She was still typing, still not looking at me. "I work to support us, to pay for this house, your car, everything we have. Nobody asked you to work yourself to death." The casual indifference in her voice hit me harder than the exhaustion. Here I was literally falling apart, and she was treating me like I was interrupting her afternoon with trivial complaints. "I need to go to urgent care. Something is not right. So go. You do not need my permission." I waited for her to offer to drive me, to come with me, to show even the slightest bit of concern. Instead, she kept typing away at her blog post about throw pillows or whatever meaningless content she was creating while I sat there feeling like I might actually die. "You are not going to come with me?" This time she did look up, and the expression on her face was pure annoyance. "I am not your caregiver. You are a grown man. Take care of yourself." Those words hung in the air like a slap. Not your caregiver. In 8 years of marriage, I had never heard anything so cold come out of her mouth. When she had food poisoning, last year, I had taken 3 days off work to bring her soup, hold her hair back, and make sure she was comfortable. When she broke her wrist, I had driven her to every appointment and helped her with everything she could not do one-handed. But apparently, that care was not mutual. "I have been taking care of myself," I said, standing up slowly. "What I thought I had was a partner. Do not be dramatic. Go to the doctor if you are that worried." Dramatic? That is what she called it. When her husband nearly collapsed from working himself into the ground to provide for their life together, I looked at this woman I had married, really looked at her, and realized I did not recognize her anymore. Or maybe this was who she had always been, and I had just been too busy working and trying to make her happy to notice. I drove myself to urgent care, waited 2 hours in a plastic chair, and found out my blood pressure was dangerously high, and I was severely dehydrated. The doctor asked if I had support at home while I recovered. I almost laughed. When I got back that evening with a prescription and strict orders to rest, she was making dinner for herself. 1 plate, 1 set of silverware. "How did it go?" she asked, not turning around from the stove. "Blood pressure through the roof. Doctor says I need to make some serious changes, or I am headed for a heart attack." "Well, maybe now you will listen when I tell you to work less." There it was again. Everything was my fault, my choice, my problem to solve. She went back to cooking her dinner like I just told her about the weather. That night, lying in bed next to someone who clearly saw me as nothing more than a paycheck with a pulse, I made a decision. If I was not her responsibility, then she definitely was not mine. And if I needed to take care of myself, I was going to do it properly. Starting tomorrow, everything was going to change. The next morning, I did exactly what she told me to do. I started taking care of myself. I called in sick for the first time in 3 years and spent the day researching what I needed to do to get my health back on track. High blood pressure, chronic stress, poor diet, no exercise. The doctor had been clear about what needed to change, and for once in my life, I was going to put my own well-being first. She left for her book club meeting without saying goodbye. I watched her drive away and realized I felt more relief than loneliness. By noon, I had found a gym 3 blocks from my office that specialized in rehabilitation and stress management. They had a physical therapy clinic attached, which seemed perfect given what the doctor had said about gradually rebuilding my fitness level. I drove over and signed up for a membership on the spot. The woman at the front desk was probably in her early 30s with kind eyes and the sort of genuine smile I had not seen in my own house for months. Her name tag read, Physical Therapy Director. "First time joining a gym?" she asked as she handed me the paperwork. "First time doing anything for myself in years, apparently." She laughed, and it was not mocking or dismissive. It was warm. "Well, you are in the right place. We specialize in helping people rebuild their health without overdoing it. What is your situation?" I found myself telling her about the near collapse, the blood pressure, the doctor's warnings. She listened intently, asking relevant questions about my work stress and current fitness level. When I finished, she nodded thoughtfully. "Sounds like your body has been sending you warning signals for a while. Good thing you are finally listening to it." My wife told me I needed to take care of myself, so here I am. Something flickered across her face, but she kept her professional smile. Smart wife. Most people need someone to push them toward better health habits. I did not correct her assumption about my wife's motivations. She spent 20 minutes showing me around the facility, explaining their approach to stress reduction and cardiovascular health. They had meditation classes, nutrition counseling, and a graduated exercise program designed for people recovering from burnout and health scares. I would recommend starting with our cardiac rehab program. It is designed for people in exactly your situation. We will monitor your heart rate and blood pressure while you exercise. Make sure you are improving safely. When can I start? How about Monday? I can do your initial assessment myself if you would like. I signed up for 3 sessions a week and left feeling more optimistic than I had in months. For the first time in years, someone had treated my health concerns as legitimate and important. Someone had listened to what I needed and offered concrete solutions. When I got home, she was back from her book club, sitting in the exact same spot on the couch. "Where were you?" she asked without looking up from her phone. "Joining a gym, doctor's orders. That is expensive. Not as expensive as a heart attack." She shrugged like my potential cardiac event was a minor inconvenience. "Just do not go overboard. You always get obsessed with things." I looked at her scrolling through social media, completely uninterested in the fact that I was taking concrete steps to improve my health after nearly collapsing. This was the woman who was supposed to care about my well-being more than anyone else in the world. "I'm starting a rehabilitation program Monday, 3 days a week." "Fine. Just do not expect me to change my schedule around it. I would not dream of it." That weekend, I meal prepped for the first time in my life. I researched heart-healthy recipes, bought actual vegetables, and spent Sunday afternoon cooking instead of watching TV with her. She made comments about how I was going overboard and making a big production out of simple lifestyle changes. But Monday morning, when I walked into that gym for my first session, I felt something I had not experienced in years: hope. The physical therapy director was waiting for me with a clipboard and a blood pressure cuff. She was wearing scrubs today instead of the polo shirt from Friday, and somehow she looked even more professional and confident. "Ready to start taking care of yourself?" she asked. More ready than I have ever been. She led me to a quiet room where she took my vitals, asked about my sleep patterns, stress levels, and current symptoms. Her questions were thorough and thoughtful. She actually cared about the answers. "Your blood pressure is still elevated, but that is expected. We will monitor it throughout your workout and adjust intensity accordingly. The goal is gradual improvement, not instant transformation." She designed a basic routine focused on stress reduction and cardiovascular health, like cardio, stretching, breathing exercises. Nothing dramatic, but everything purposeful. As I worked through the exercises, she stayed nearby, offering encouragement and making small adjustments to my form. "You are doing great. How does that feel?" "Like I should have started this years ago. Better late than never. Your body is remarkably good at healing itself when you give it the chance." After the session, she walked me to the front desk and scheduled my next appointment. As I was leaving, she touched my arm gently. "I am proud of you for taking this step. A lot of people ignore their warning signs until it is too late." I drove home feeling energized despite the workout. Someone had seen my effort to improve my health and acknowledged it. Someone had been proud of me for taking care of myself. When I walked through the front door, she was in her usual spot. "How was the gym?" "Good. Really good, actually. Do not overdo it. You always go too hard at things and then quit. I looked at this woman who somehow managed to turn every positive step I took into a criticism or warning. Then I thought about the encouragement I had received from someone who barely knew me, but had shown more interest in my well-being in 2 hours than my wife had shown in months. I am not going to quit this time, and I meant it. 2 weeks into my rehabilitation program, I was already feeling like a different person. My blood pressure had dropped 10 points. I was sleeping better, and for the first time in months, I had energy left at the end of the day. More importantly, I was looking forward to something again. Every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, I would drive to the gym knowing someone would be genuinely interested in how I was progressing. The physical therapy director had become more than just my trainer. She remembered details about my week, asked about my stress levels at work, and celebrated small victories like completing an extra 5 minutes on the treadmill. "Your form on those stretches is perfect now," she said during my Wednesday session. "And look at this." She showed me the chart where she tracked my heart rate. "You are recovering faster between exercises. Your cardiovascular fitness is definitely improving. I can feel the difference. I am not exhausted by noon anymore. That is what proper self-care looks like. Your body was running on empty for so long, it forgot what normal felt like." We developed an easy rapport during our sessions. She was professional but warm, and I found myself sharing things I had never told anyone about: the pressure at work, the isolation at home, the way I had been neglecting my own needs for years. "You mentioned your wife encouraged you to start taking care of yourself," she said as we finished up that day's routine. "She must be happy to see the improvements." I paused on the exercise bike, not sure how to answer that. The truth was, my wife had barely acknowledged the changes. When I tried to share my progress, she nodded absently and changed the subject. When I had suggested we take evening walks together, she had said she was too busy with her projects. She is not really the supportive type. Something shifted in her expression. "That must be difficult. Making health changes is hard enough without feeling like you are doing it alone." "I am not alone. I have you cheering me on 3 times a week," she smiled. But there was something thoughtful in her eyes. "It is part of my job to support my clients, but it should not just be your trainer who cares about your well-being." That evening, I got home to find my wife exactly where I had left her that morning. Same spot on the couch, same laptop, same disinterested expression when I walked through the door. "How was the gym?" "Great. My blood pressure is down another 5 points." "That is nice." Nice. Like I told her about a decent lunch or a smooth commute. I sat down across from her, really studying her face as she scrolled through whatever was more important than her husband's health recovery. "The physical therapist says I am making exceptional progress. She thinks I might be able to reduce my medication if I keep improving at this rate." That is good. I could have told her I was training for the Olympics or planning to climb Mount Everest, and I would have gotten the same half-hearted responses. The contrast between her indifference and the genuine enthusiasm I received at the gym was becoming impossible to ignore. Friday's session was different. We were working on core strengthening exercises when she noticed I seemed distracted. "Everything okay? You are looking a little off today." The fact that she had picked up on my mood after knowing me for 2 weeks while my wife had not noticed I was struggling for months was not lost on me. "Just thinking about some things at home. Want to talk about it?" Sometimes it helps to get things off your chest. I found myself telling her about the conversation the night before, about how my wife's complete lack of interest in my health journey was starting to affect my motivation. She listened without judgment, occasionally nodding or asking clarifying questions. "That sounds incredibly frustrating," she said when I finished. "You are making these positive changes for your health and your future, and the person closest to you is not even acknowledging the effort. She told me to take care of myself. I guess I just expected that meant she would be happy when I actually did it." There is a difference between telling someone to handle their problems and actually supporting them through the solution. We finished the session in comfortable conversation about stress management and the importance of having a support system. As I was gathering my things, she hesitated before speaking again. "I hope this does not sound unprofessional, but I want you to know that what you are doing here is impressive. A lot of people get a health scare and make promises to change, but they do not follow through. You are actually doing the work. It is easier when someone notices the effort. Everyone deserves to have their efforts noticed, especially by the people who matter most." That weekend, I tried one more time to include my wife in my health journey. I suggested we go hiking together, something we used to enjoy during our first year of marriage. She said she did not feel like getting sweaty. I asked if she wanted to try the healthy recipes I had been making. She ordered takeout instead. I mentioned that my trainer thought couples who exercise together had stronger relationships. She asked if I was becoming one of those gym-obsessed people who could not talk about anything else. Sunday night, as I lay in bed next to someone who treated my biggest life improvement like a minor hobby, I realized something had fundamentally changed. I was not just getting physically healthier. I was remembering what it felt like to be around someone who actually gave a damn about my well-being. Monday morning, I found myself looking forward to my gym session with an intensity that had nothing to do with exercise. I was looking forward to spending time with someone who asked how I was doing and actually listened to the answer. Someone who celebrated my progress and encouraged me to keep going. Someone who made me feel like my health and happiness actually mattered. For the first time in years, I was excited to spend time with someone who cared about me, and that someone was not my wife. 1 month into my program, my transformation was undeniable. I had lost 15 pounds. My blood pressure was nearly normal, and I had more energy than I had felt in years. More importantly, I had stopped trying to get my wife's attention or approval for anything. She had made it clear that my well-being was not her concern, so I had stopped making it her business. When she asked about my day, I gave brief, polite answers. When she complained about her various problems, I listened with the same distant attention she had always shown me. When she suggested weekend activities that revolved around her interests, I politely declined and went to the gym instead. "You are never here anymore," she said one Thursday evening as I prepared my gym bag for the next day. "I am taking care of myself like you suggested. I did not mean you should become obsessed with it. I am not obsessed, I am committed." There is a difference. She went back to her laptop with that familiar look of annoyance, the same expression she had had when I had nearly collapsed from exhaustion. Nothing I did was ever quite right for her. At the gym the next day, my physical therapist immediately noticed my improved mood. "You look different today, more relaxed. I have stopped trying to get blood from a stone." She raised an eyebrow as she checked my heart rate monitor. "That sounds like there is a story behind it." During our session, I found myself explaining how I had finally accepted that my wife simply was not interested in being a supportive partner. How I had stopped expecting her to care about my progress and started focusing entirely on my own improvement. That must have been a difficult realization. Actually, it was liberating. Once I stopped trying to get her attention, I had a lot more energy for things that actually mattered. She nodded thoughtfully as she adjusted the resistance on my exercise bike. "It is amazing how much effort we waste trying to get support from people who are not capable of giving it." "Exactly. Now I just focus on the people who actually want to see me succeed." "Like your workout buddy here?" She gestured to herself with a smile. "My workout buddy, my doctor, my co-workers who have noticed I am not stressed out all the time anymore. Turns out there are plenty of people who care about my well-being. I just was not paying attention to them before." She was quiet for a moment, then looked at me directly. "Can I ask you something personal?" "Sure. Are you happy?" The question caught me off guard. When was the last time someone had asked me that? When was the last time I had even considered it? You know what? I think I am. For the first time in years, I am actually happy. Good. You deserve to be happy. After my workout, she walked me to the front desk as usual, but this time she seemed hesitant about something. "I'm grabbing coffee after work today. There is a place called Corner Cafe about 2 blocks from here. They have great smoothies, too, if you are sticking to your healthy eating plan." I looked at her for a moment, understanding exactly what she was offering. A chance to spend time together outside the professional setting. A chance to continue the conversations we had been having. To explore this connection that had been growing stronger with each session. "What time do you get off work?" 6:30. "I will see you there." That evening, I texted my wife that I would be home late. She responded with a simple okay and did not ask where I was going. I was not surprised. The cafe was busy but comfortable with the kind of atmosphere that invited long conversations. She was already there when I arrived, having changed out of her scrubs into jeans and a sweater. She looked beautiful in a way that had nothing to do with makeup or fancy clothes. She looked genuine. "This is nice," I said as I sat down across from her with my protein smoothie. "I hope it is not weird meeting outside the gym. We have been having such good conversations during your sessions, and I thought it might be nice to talk without the time constraints." "It is not weird at all. It is probably the best part of my week." We talked for 2 hours about everything and nothing. She told me about her background in physical therapy, her passion for helping people rebuild their lives after health crisis. I told her about my work, my goals, the way I had been rediscovering who I was outside of trying to please someone who could not be pleased. "You are a completely different person than the man who walked into the gym 6 weeks ago," she said as we prepared to leave. I feel completely different, stronger, more confident, it shows. And not just physically, you carry yourself differently now. Walking to our cars, she stopped and turned to me. I need to tell you something. This probably is not professional of me, but I look forward to your sessions more than any others. You are not just my client anymore. What am I then? You are someone I care about, someone I am genuinely invested in seeing succeed and be happy. Standing there in the parking lot, I realized I was looking at someone who had seen me at my lowest point and had chosen to help me become better. Someone who celebrated my victories and supported me through setbacks. Someone who asked how I was doing and actually listened to the answer. I care about you too, more than I probably should. There is nothing wrong with caring about people who care about you. I drove home that night feeling something I had not experienced in years. I felt valued, appreciated, important to someone who mattered to me. When I walked through the front door, my wife was in her usual spot, doing her usual things. She glanced up briefly when I came in. You are late. I stopped for coffee. Oh, how was the gym? Productive. She went back to her screen, completely uninterested in any details about my evening or how I was feeling. The contrast between her indifference and the genuine connection I had just experienced was stark. As I got ready for bed, I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. I saw a man who was healthy, confident, and valued by someone who truly cared about his well-being. I saw someone who had stopped settling for scraps of attention from someone who could not be bothered to care. I saw someone who deserved better, and for the first time in my marriage, I was starting to believe I might actually get it. The shift in my behavior at home was impossible to miss. I stopped asking my wife about her day with genuine interest. I stopped trying to include her in my health journey. I stopped caring whether she noticed or approved of anything I did. Most importantly, I stopped being available for her complaints and drama. When she wanted to vent about her book club friends, I listened with polite disinterest and went back to meal prepping. When she expected me to fix problems she had created for herself, I suggested she handle it and continued with my evening routine. When she tried to guilt me about spending time at the gym, I reminded her that she had told me to take care of myself. It took her 3 weeks to realize she had lost her audience. You are different lately, she said one evening as I returned from the gym. Different how? Distant, like you do not care about anything that is happening here. I looked at her sitting in her permanent spot on the couch, surrounded by the same mess she had been creating for months, complaining about the same people and problems she never actually tried to solve. You told me I was not your responsibility. I am just returning the favor. That is not what I meant, really. Because when I nearly collapsed from exhaustion, you made it very clear that my well-being was not your concern. I am just following your lead. She was quiet for a moment, probably realizing for the first time that her words had consequences. I was just stressed that day. I did not mean it like that. You meant it exactly like that. And you have shown me exactly like that every day since. That is not fair. I almost laughed. Fair. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been having a wife who cared when her husband almost had a medical emergency. Fair would have been having someone support my efforts to get healthy instead of dismissing them. Fair would have been having a partner instead of a roommate who treats me like an inconvenience. She stared at me like I had spoken a foreign language. Where is this coming from? This is coming from me finally accepting what you have been showing me for months. You do not want to be my caregiver? Fine. I found someone who actually cares about my well-being. What do you mean? You found someone? The accusation in her voice was rich, considering she had spent years showing zero interest in my life. I have people in my life now who are genuinely invested in my health and happiness. People who notice when I'm making progress and celebrate with me. People who ask how I am doing and actually listen to the answer. Are you talking about that trainer? I am talking about anyone who treats me like I matter, which apparently does not include my wife. She stood up then, finally putting down her laptop and giving me her full attention for the first time in months. You're being ridiculous. Of course you matter to me. Really? Name one thing I have accomplished in the past 2 months. Silence. Tell me one goal I've achieved, or one positive change I have made. More silence. Here is an easier one. What did I have for breakfast this morning? She opened her mouth and then closed it, realizing she had no idea about any aspect of my daily life.
I have lost 22 pounds, brought my blood pressure into the normal range, and completely changed my relationship with stress and health.
I have been working with a physical therapist who has helped me rebuild my fitness from the ground up. I've been meal prepping, exercising 5 days a week, and sleeping better than I have in years. I watched her face as each fact hit her. She had been so disconnected from my life that my entire transformation had happened without her noticing. And through all of this, you have shown about as much interest as you would in a stranger's fitness journey. Actually, less. Most strangers would at least say congratulations. I did not realize. You did not realize because you do not pay attention, you do not ask questions. You do not care about anything that does not directly affect you. That is not true. When is the last time you asked me how I was feeling? Not how was work or how was the gym. When did you last ask how I was actually doing? She could not answer because we both knew it had been months, maybe longer. The physical therapist I work with asks me that question every single session. She remembers what I tell her about my stress levels, my sleep, my energy. She celebrates when I hit a new milestone and encourages me when I am struggling. She knows more about my daily life after 2 months than you have bothered to learn in 2 years. Are you having an affair? I am having conversations, real conversations, with someone who actually gives a damn about my answers. Something I have not had at home in so long, I had forgotten what it felt like. I give a damn. No, you do not. You give a damn about your blog, your book club, your decorating projects, your social media. You give a damn about having someone around to pay the bills and listen to your complaints, but you do not give a damn about me as a person. The truth of it hung in the air between us. She tried to argue, to defend herself, but we both knew I was right. She checked out of our marriage so completely that she had not even noticed when I stopped trying to check back in. I can change, she said finally. Why would you want to? You have made it clear that caring about my well-being is not something you are interested in doing. I was wrong. I see that now. You see it now because you have lost my attention, not because you actually care about my well-being. You are upset because I am not focused on you anymore, not because you want focus on me. She started to protest, but I held up my hand. I spent 8 years trying to be enough for someone who could not be bothered to notice when I was falling apart. I am done with that. I am done begging for scraps of care from someone who treats my health, my goals, and my feelings like they are optional considerations in her life. So what are you saying? I am saying I have learned what it feels like to be around someone who actually cares about my well-being, and I am never going back to settling for less than that. I walked upstairs, leaving her standing in the living room with the weight of 8 years of negligence finally catching up to her. She had had every opportunity to be the person who supported my journey back to health. Instead, she had chosen indifference. Now, she was discovering that indifference was a two-way street, and she had spent so long walking down it alone that she had forgotten how to find her way back. The next 2 weeks were a masterclass in too little too late. Suddenly, my wife was interested in everything. She asked about my workouts, complimented my weight loss, and even suggested we cook healthy meals together. She wanted to know about my day, my goals, my feelings. After months of treating me like background noise, she was desperate to become the supportive wife she had never bothered to be. But I had already made my decision. The physical therapist and I had been meeting for coffee twice a week after my sessions. What started as professional conversations had evolved into something deeper. She knew my favorite smoothie order, remembered details about my work projects, and genuinely celebrated every milestone in my health journey. When I mentioned feeling lonely in my marriage, she listened without judgment. When I talked about my goals for the future, she encouraged me to dream bigger. You seem lighter lately, she said during our Wednesday session. More confident. I feel like I am finally living for myself instead of trying to earn someone's attention. That is a big shift. How is your wife handling the changes? She has noticed that I am not available to be her emotional support system anymore. Now she wants to be involved in my health journey. That sounds positive. It would be if it was genuine. But she is only interested now because she has lost control of the situation. For 8 months, she could not be bothered to ask how I was feeling. Now that I found happiness elsewhere, suddenly she wants to be supportive. We finished the session and walked to the parking lot together, something that had become routine. But today felt different. She stopped by her car and turned to face me. Can I tell you something? Always. I have been doing this job for 7 years. I have helped hundreds of people rebuild their health and confidence. But I have never met anyone who has inspired me the way you have. I inspire you? You took control of your life when everything was falling apart. You did not make excuses or blame other people. You just did the work every single day, even when the person who should have been supporting you is nowhere to be found. She stepped closer, and I could see something in her eyes that I had not seen directed at me in years. Genuine care, real affection, actual love. I know this is complicated because you are married, but I need you to know that these past 3 months have meant everything to me. You have shown me what it looks like when someone truly commits to becoming their best self. These months have meant everything to me too. You saved my life. You saved your own life. I just cheered you on. Standing there in the parking lot, I realized I was looking at someone who had seen me at my absolute lowest and had chosen to help me rise. Someone who had celebrated every small victory and supported me through every setback. Someone who had shown me what it felt like to be truly cared for. I have made my decision about my marriage. What decision? I am choosing myself. I am choosing happiness. I am choosing someone who actually wants to be part of my life, instead of someone who only wants my attention when she is losing it. She was quiet for a long moment. Are you sure? I have never been more sure of anything in my life. That evening I came home to find my wife had prepared a healthy dinner for both of us. She had even bought flowers for the table. The effort was touching, but it was 8 years too late. I thought we could eat together tonight, she said with forced brightness. Talk about your progress at the gym. I sat down across from her and looked at this woman who had suddenly discovered interest in my well-being only after realizing she was losing me to someone who had always cared. This is nice, I said, but it does not change anything. What do you mean? I mean, you are trying to be the wife you should have been all along, but only because you are afraid of losing what you never actually valued. I do value you. You value the security I provide. You value having someone around to pay the bills and listen to your problems, but you do not value me as a person worth caring about. She started to argue, but I continued. When I nearly collapsed from exhaustion, you told me you were not my caregiver. When I started getting healthy, you dismissed it as obsessive behavior. When I began rebuilding my confidence, you ignored it completely. The only reason you are interested now is because you have realized I am not desperate for your attention anymore. People can change, they can, but you have not changed. You have just gotten scared. There is a difference. I stood up from the table, my decision crystallizing with perfect clarity. I filed for divorce. The words hung in the air like a final verdict. She stared at me in shock, as if this outcome was completely unexpected, despite months of showing me exactly how little I meant to her. You cannot be serious. I am completely serious. I have spent 3 months learning what it feels like to be around someone who genuinely cares about my well-being, someone who asks how I am doing and actually listens to the answer, someone who celebrates my victories and supports me through challenges. I can do that too. No, you cannot. Because caring is not something you can fake or perform when it is convenient. It is something you feel or you do not. And you have shown me for 8 years that you do not feel it for me. So, you are leaving me for your trainer? I am leaving you for myself. The trainer just showed me what it feels like to be valued by someone who chooses to care about me every single day. She tried every manipulation tactic she could think of. Tears, anger, promises to change, threats about what divorce would cost me. But I had already calculated the cost of staying with someone who saw my well-being as optional, and it was far higher than anything a lawyer could charge me. 6 months later, I was living in a house I had chosen, eating meals I enjoyed, and spending my evenings with someone who asked about my day because she genuinely wanted to know the answer. My blood pressure was perfect. My fitness goals were being met, and for the first time in years, I was genuinely happy. My ex-wife had taught me an invaluable lesson. When someone tells you they are not your caregiver, believe them. And when someone shows you they actually care about your well-being, do not let them go. I had finally learned the difference between someone who tells you to take care of yourself and someone who actually wants to take care of you. And I had chosen to spend my life with someone who understood that caring for each other is not a burden to avoid, but a privilege to embrace. My wife had been right about one thing. I did not need to take care of myself. I just needed to find someone who understood that sometimes taking care of yourself means choosing people who actually want to be part of your life. And that is exactly what I did. Our story has come to an end. If you have made it this far, how about subscribing to our channel? It helps us immensely. I've selected 2 other videos for you that I am sure you will enjoy. Feel free to click on them. I will be waiting for you in the next story. See you soon.